How's it going, everyone? It's Sam. Today I have an awesome episode. We're going to be talking about what could send crypto absolutely parabolic. What could send it up 5, 10, 20x? What could push Bitcoin up to $500,000 or $1,000,000? Some of this is going to be happening in the next bull run. Some might take even longer. Some is happening right now. I also want to cover some of the top news, take a look at some charts. If you don't mind, hit subscribe, turn on that bell notification underneath the video so you can see future videos just like this one, because things are starting to get crazy out there. You want to make sure you get the videos as quickly as possible. While you're down there, there's a link down there to Treasure where you can get 15% off using that link or using my code MyFinancialFriend with a capital M. That's the biggest discount they'll give you, because I am literally making nothing from this affiliate code when you use it. I'm giving you the entire discount. Otherwise, I could take 15% and give you no discount, but I would rather make sure that you get your hands on a cold storage device. And if you want to trade, so there are two different sides to this, right? You can buy and hold long term, or you can trade. There are links down there to Margex that has no KYC, and I don't even think you need a VPN in the US. And then there's also a link down there to BitGet. In case you're outside the US, that platform is a little bit has some more functionality to it, but Margex is also pretty cool because you can use different forms of collateral. So you can use USDT to trade Solana or Bitcoin. You can use USDC to do that. You can use Ethereum to trade Bitcoin, all types of stuff. So you can check out those links underneath the video. Now, let's take a look at the market. It has been a great week. As we talked about yesterday in the video, the market's really flipped this week. Like, everyone is bullish. So my natural inclination is to be a little bit careful, right? When people start to get greedy, I love watching it, but this isn't a time where I go and dump everything into the market because typically, you want to be buying on fear, but it's still awesome to see. Let's take a look at the 24 hours. Who is up the most? Multiverse X, EGLD, up 38%, Neo up 23%, Pancake Swap up 22%, up 87% this week. KuCoin token up 14%. Interesting to see a token from an exchange moving up. Immutable X, or Immutable, 13%. OKB, guessing that's OKX's token, up 13%. So a lot of cryptos up significantly. It doesn't look like there's just one narrative. It looks like gaming, exchange coins, decentralized exchanges. There's a lot moving up today. Now, over the week, it's been a good week for pretty much all crypto assets, for a lot of stocks as well. We talked about it yesterday. If you haven't seen that video, go watch it. But really talking about how it seems like there's a pivot from the Fed, at least in what they're looking at. I'm not saying that the pivot's happening right now. I'm not saying that all of a sudden they're cutting, but their demeanor, what they're projecting, or what kind of vibe they're giving off, it's changing. Watch that video. I explain a lot better there. Now, with that, scammers are coming out again. This is a fake page. This is not me. My financial friend. This is not me. I mean, they use pictures, so be careful. Someone reached out talking to me about this. I reported them. It's kind of an annoying process on Twitter to report someone. It's harder than it should be, but be careful. I'm never going to ask you to start trading with me. They even say, I will never message you. If I do, it's a scammer. That's what I have on mine, right? I'm not going to reach out to you to try to get you to send me some of your crypto so I can trade it for you. I'm not going to get you in some trading university or anything like that. You can use the links to trade underneath the video, but I'm never going to take your money from you. There's also a new scam here. Ledger Live app on the Microsoft App Store stealing users' Bitcoin. So they actually got on the Microsoft Store. I'm not sure how they did this, but yeah, it's a scam. Always go to the official website, and probably the best thing to do is use some influencer that that you feel very comfortable with. Use their link to something like this, because they do have a face behind them. They've been on the app. They have a lot to lose, right, if they give a fake link underneath their video, and use that and then just confirm that it's the legitimate address and that they have tons of reviews. This one only has 1 rating, which should be an indicator, right? Make sure that you read the reviews as well, see what they say. If they sound too fake, then just be careful. It's going to be a crazy time over the next couple of years. You're probably going to get scammed somewhere, and I'd rather you don't. So just be careful out there. Now, we are starting to see a breakout in total 3. So this is excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum, and it's a breakout. It's actually forming a higher high. You can see here lower high, lower high, lower high, but now a higher high coming from this previous point, and we are breaking this trend line. Now, keep in mind that this is not against Bitcoin, so if you're thinking, oh, Bitcoin dominance is going to get shattered here if we see a breakout, that's not necessarily true based on this chart. It just shows that the overall market cap is actually making a substantial move, and when you compare it to the bottom of 290, it is up about 35%. 33%, something like that. So this is a pretty nice move here. We could see a lot of money flowing into altcoins, and we are right now. We're seeing that right now. Now, Bitcoin is looking good too. I mean, it's staying right in this channel that we've been showing for the last couple weeks here on the channel. It's looking beautiful. I've traded 3 different times in this range, just nailing this bottom, nailing the bottom, nailing the bottom, and then bouncing right back up. It's pretty easy to play, but it's awesome to see Bitcoin consolidating, but upwards consolidating, up around 35,000 right now. Bitcoin dominance is falling down, so I am going to talk about Bitcoin dominance when it's going down or up. It does seem like it's falling down. Obviously, we went from 54.3%. Now we're down at 52.96%, so we fell 1.3%. But keep in mind, we are still higher. We could come down right here to this previous high and then bounce right back up. I mean, that's exactly what happened here, right? We plotted this out. We charted it out. We came up, fell down, touched here, and then made a huge move up. So that's very possible. We could fall down. You could see another big move in altcoins. Bitcoin staying sideways. It could be beautiful. We could hit this line and then go straight up. So, of course, TA is useful. We can't tell everything just from TA, but it, as you go along, becomes easier and easier to kind of spot these kinds of patterns. Now, let's move on to some of the big things that could push Bitcoin's price up, push up crypto's price too. And some of these are already happening. Some of these different things have been happening for years, but some are still yet to come. So let's go through. There's actually a long list. I'm going to try to keep it moving throughout it. And let's talk about what could really push up the price. So obviously, one of the biggest things that's happened over the last year is a change in the accounting rules. So right now, how it's been set up is if you buy Bitcoin as a company, and then let's say you buy $1 million worth of Bitcoin, and then the value of the Bitcoin, right? Maybe you pay $30,000 per Bitcoin. Let's say it goes down to $20,000 per Bitcoin. You get a pretty big loss. So you go from $1 million worth of Bitcoin to 666,000, and then you have to account for that loss, right? At the end of the quarter, you have to show that you lost $333,000. Now, if the value goes right back up then to $1 million, let's say Bitcoin goes right back up to 30,000, right? You can't actually show that you made money on that until you sell. That is how Bitcoin is accounted for right now, or was accounted for. So, you could buy a lot of Bitcoin, it could go down, and then you could make 10x on it, and you'd still have to show it as a loss, which is just dumb. It's an accounting rule that has been changed recently. Now we're actually going to be able to show Bitcoin actually moving back up in price without having to sell. So companies like MicroStrategy can take advantage of this. I mean, MicroStrategy has $2.23 billion in cumulative impairment losses. The largest one was almost $1 billion recorded in the second quarter of 2022. Now this accounting rule is changing. So this will go into effect during 2025 for the fiscal years beginning after December 15, 2024. However, companies can adopt the changes early. So I'm guessing, I haven't heard MicroStrategy talk about this or Michael Saylor, but I'm guessing they're probably going to be doing this coming year. They kind of like to show how things can be done so they can help other companies move to Bitcoin too. And they're going to start 1 year early. It makes sense for them to start during a full year, I think. So we'll see how this all plays out. But I think this is a big positive for the market because companies then can buy Bitcoin without having to be worried about showing billions of dollars or tens of billions of dollars worth of losses on their statements at the end of the quarter, the end of the year. So I think that is pretty beneficial. Now, we could also see the Bitcoin spot approval. So if if you are newer to the channel, or maybe you haven't been around crypto as much, because we have to remember there are people starting to come in to the market now. There are new people coming into the market. So we're going to have to go over some things that we've talked about for a while on the channel, but stick around here. Spot BTC ETF being approved. What does that mean, first of all? Well, basically, there are some companies right now that hold Bitcoin. They hold it for people to be able to go buy it and buy their stock that then has some exposure to Bitcoin instead of buying Bitcoin themselves. So let's say I'm a financial advisor. I don't want to have to go buy Bitcoin for all my clients, keep them on cold storage wallets. That's a lot of pressure and it's a lot of work, right? You have to be very careful about sending crypto over. Some people just don't even know how to do it anyways. And there's just a lot of liability there. So instead, some companies have set up ETFs or exchange traded funds where the company goes and buys a bunch of Bitcoin, and then different people can just buy their stock instead, right? So it's like a proxy for Bitcoin. Now, how those work right now is not how we want them to work. They don't buy and sell Bitcoin right when people buy and sell their stock. So the value of their holdings in Bitcoin versus their stock price goes up and down. So if you buy Bitcoin, or if you buy this ETF, you might have different returns. So what they want is a spot Bitcoin ETF approval, which means basically when someone goes and buys the stock, let's say they buy $1 million worth, then that company goes and buys $1 million worth of Bitcoin. So that would be really beneficial because it will add more buying pressure. And a lot of companies, like investment companies, just won't buy something unless it's a spot ETF. Unless they can go to the ETF and say, hey, I want the exact value of my assets. I want that withdrawn in Bitcoin. They'll do that for spot ETF, but they won't do it for the ETFs that we have right now. So we have futures ETFs right now, which are fine, but they're not as good as a spot ETF. So that will add more buying pressure and will take more Bitcoin off the market. There are only so many people selling Bitcoin at any given time. So if these ETFs are being bought up and they just keep on buying Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin will go up. People will have to pay more for Bitcoin. So that's obviously pretty beneficial as well. And a lot of people are excited waiting for a spot ETF approval. So I think that is likely to come in the coming couple months probably. Now, another thing that could happen is we start to see big investment companies pushing Bitcoin. We're already seeing that with BlackRock, one of the largest asset managers in the world. I think it's actually the largest. They're starting to talk about Bitcoin on air all the time. Larry Fink's going and talking about Bitcoin, and MicroStrategy's talking about Bitcoin. There are going to be more companies talking about Bitcoin, that properties that they like about it. It causes more awareness, more people to feel like this isn't just some crazy asset that's super volatile, super risky, has no inherent value. They see someone that's really successful working for a large investment company, and there's some credibility to that. It'd be like your doctor talking about, some kind of treatment in a very positive light. Obviously, you're going to think more of it. You're not going to think that it's just some crazy idea. So when that kind of thing happens, it's going to be very bullish for Bitcoin. That's just something that's already happening, but it's going to continue to happen as more and more people see it, hear about it, from people that they respect, from billionaires, from large investment companies. They're going to feel more comfortable with it. Then once that happens, we're going to start having Bitcoin allocations in retirement funds. That's, I think, one of the biggest things that people don't really talk about is a target date retirement fund is something that people buy starting at a company, and they pretty much never sell, right? I guess if you move companies, maybe you liquidate, but a lot of people will just transfer it. If you stay at a company for a long time, you're probably not even looking at it. Maybe you up your contributions, but a lot of people don't even look at what they're buying within their 401ks. So having it in some retirement account, maybe 2% goes to Bitcoin, 8% goes to bonds, and then 90% to US stocks. That will buy a lot of Bitcoin over time, and people just never sell it. So there will be less on the market that people are trying to sell. And then something that I don't think too many people talk about is we could have FDIC insurance or SIPC insurance for Bitcoin. There are a lot of banks that are talking about holding Bitcoin, custodying it for their clients. Like, oh, you want to go buy $1 million? Okay, we'll hold it for you. And then we might charge a low fee or something like that. Maybe we charge a buying fee of 1% or something. Or maybe you're just a really good client and we want to keep your money here, so we'll do it for free, that kind of thing. So what if they start to give insurance? right? So if your bank went down, if they went bankrupt, well, your Bitcoin's still insured. We'll go out and buy more Bitcoin if we need to, right? That might be a little bit more difficult, but that could be something that could happen, right? We already have SIPC for different investments. It makes people feel a lot more comfortable to buy those investments. But think about like when all these exchanges went down. How much would that have been worth if you knew that you had $500,000 worth of insurance, right? You feel a lot more comfortable putting your crypto back on exchanges now, right? Even though exchanges had gone down in the past and had gone bankrupt, you got your money back. So you just put in another one, right? If some bank goes bankrupt, you're not thinking about pulling out all your money forever because you know that's insured at the next bank. Then we could also have the ability to buy Bitcoin or other cryptos at a bank. So literally just like I've seen some companies talking about this, some banks where they offer it in the banking account. Like you can switch back and forth between USD and Bitcoin. Now, I don't think that's going to get wide adoption for a while, but I could be wrong. You never know. Things move very quickly. Obviously, big companies could buy Bitcoin too. We know that Tesla has Bitcoin. We know MicroStrategy has Bitcoin, but it seems like this is going to be something that more and more companies want, especially with the change in accounting rules. We kind of talked about that. Countries could be adding Bitcoin to their strategic reserves as well. We know El Salvador started to accept cryptocurrency and make it legal tender. But there are other countries that I think are pretty bullish on Bitcoin too. El Salvador is one example. Now Argentina has two remaining presidential candidates that are bullish on Bitcoin. So maybe they make it legal tender. Imagine like a large country saying you have to take Bitcoin. If someone wants to pay you in Bitcoin, you have to take it. That is what legal tender is. So we could see more countries doing that. That means more people buying Bitcoin, more people using Bitcoin, more people just holding it as a savings. And a lot of people think that Bitcoin's volatile, but if you look at it in other currencies, let's look at Bitcoin versus Argentinian peso. The thing is, we think of Bitcoin as very volatile because we look at it against the US dollar. But other countries consistently lose value because they have so much inflation. So yeah, Bitcoin might go down in value, but like this, Bitcoin versus the Argentinian peso, because they have so much inflation, it's at an all-time high and not even close. I mean, if you look at 2021, one Bitcoin was worth 6.5 million Argentinian pesos. Now it's worth almost double that, even though Bitcoin's value in the US dollar is still about half of the all-time high. So, I mean, that's the difference, right? We look at one of the best currencies in the world, the US dollar, one of the most stable ones, and we think, oh, Bitcoin's really volatile. But when you look at other currencies, it would be much better to hold all your money in Bitcoin than having it in Argentinian pesos because you know you're going to lose so much value there. So that is one other thing to consider. There's going to be a handful of other things that are just bound to happen too, like more halvings, right? We already know that there are going to be more halvings. Every about 4 years, we've had halvings, and that's just where the new supply of Bitcoin gets cut in half. So there's not less Bitcoin out there. It's just that the new supply that's hitting the market from Bitcoin miners all the time gets cut in half. That means that there's less selling pressure because Bitcoin miners are considered one of the largest sellers on the market because they're using electricity to mine Bitcoin, and then they have to a lot of the time sell the Bitcoin to then pay for their bills, their employees, their buildings, their electricity, all that kind of stuff. So they do sell all their Bitcoin. Now, when the supply gets cut in half, or the new supply gets cut in half at the Bitcoin halving, that means there's half as much Bitcoin hitting the market. Okay, and I want to say too, in case my voice sounds a little bit weird, I was at a wedding last night, out till 2 a.m., singing, dancing, all that kind of stuff, so apologize for that. We're going to try to make it through, though. I think we can do it. Other assets could continue to be inflated, like gold. I say all roads lead to Bitcoin all the time, and it's true. Like, whenever I see any piece of news come up, it usually is good for Bitcoin. And when you look at inflation, right, we usually talk about dollar inflation, but there's inflation in all kinds of assets. Bitcoin's really the only asset that can't be inflated. There's only so much Bitcoin, and if it becomes more valuable, well, great. You can't buy it anymore, or you can't, there's going to be no more produced if Bitcoin's value goes up. So compare that to gold. I mean, a lot of people don't know 40% of the world's gold comes from or has come from this place, Witwatersrand. I had never heard of it the other day, but 40% of all gold produced on Earth since beginning of time, over 1.5 billion years ago, came from here. And look at how small this is, right? You have this area. It's like 50 kilometers by 10 kilometers. Look how small this is on the world map. I mean, this is just one little area of one little city of a not even a huge country, South Africa. Are you telling me that there's no chance that we could find another mine like this? We could have 40% inflation if we found another mine like this. And we've seen other places in Africa that have had huge amounts of gold. We could have meteors. We could go mine meteors. They're all different types of things that could happen. So whenever I look at this, I think, okay, if gold becomes more valuable, well, then more people are going to go mine it, right? There's more opportunity to make money from it. So more people will put money into mining it, and then it will continue to get a higher and higher inflation rate. And then the value will kind of even back out, supply and demand. We could also see more companies accept Bitcoin as payment. For example, Tesla said that they would look at accepting Bitcoin as payment again if it became clean enough, 50% renewable energy or more. And that's already happened. So they could start accepting it for payment. It hits news headlines. People like that kind of thing. I don't think it really matters that much. I guess it gives some people that maybe don't understand Bitcoin reason for why they might want Bitcoin, because they think that they can spend it, but you can always just buy it and then sell it if you need to, or transfer it, that kind of thing. So I don't really care about that as much, but it is something that I think gets people excited. And it is another use case for Bitcoin, right? And, we'll have plenty of ways to spend Bitcoin down the line, I think, but most people will want to hold on to their Bitcoin. That's how most people think about it right now. A lot of people treat it as an investment, not necessarily a currency, or they treat it as a savings account. We could also see more government oppression. This is bound to happen, like the Canadian truckers movement. Whether you believed what they believed, they were fighting COVID restrictions, that kind of thing. Whether you believe that or not, the government froze people's accounts without going through courts. So if they thought you were part of this movement, if they thought you were saying something that they didn't like politically, or you're causing trouble, right, parking your semi somewhere that you shouldn't, they can freeze your assets. I mean, imagine that. If you did something that was, illegal, kind of illegal, but you were doing it to express yourself, express your opinions on something, and then you had all your accounts frozen without going through court. So just one person says, I don't like what they're doing, press the freeze button. I mean, banks kind of can do that already, but usually there's more oversight. So as time goes on, there are going to be more crazy things like that happen, where people just invoke an emergency act and then they can freeze your assets if they don't like what you're saying. With CBDCs, that's also something that's possible. Like when the government starts saying, oh yeah, use this digital money that we have, they can track everywhere you spend it, and then if they don't like what you're doing, they can just freeze all your accounts. So stuff like that, I think people see that and they think, is there a way out? And obviously Bitcoin is the way out. There are also banks that are talking about restricting withdrawals because they don't want bank runs. So they're thinking about imposing exit fees on customers who try to take out their own money. That's crazy. Imagine you have money at a bank and they just say, you can't take out that much. And a lot of the time they'll do that with cash, right? They only have so much cash on hand, and it makes sense for liability reasons. But you can still withdraw your money in a check, cashier's check, wire transfer, that kind of stuff. But imagine you had to wait 6 months to move your money out of a bank. How terrible would that be? That makes people want to get away from the banks. So things like that, people realize, I could just have Bitcoin and I can transfer it anywhere in the world for a penny, maybe a couple dollars if you don't want to use Lightning Network. And I can do that any time of the day. So a lot of people realize that's a big thing that's really beneficial. And this is more of the stuff that is just really, I think, pretty obvious. And some of the slow trickles that will get people to look at Bitcoin over time. The beginning ones were more like exponential moves. Like if there was SIPC or FDIC insurance for Bitcoin, something like that, that's going to be huge. That's just going to push up the price right away. If Bitcoin starts being allocated in retirement funds, it's going to be a slow trickle, and it's going to be freaking awesome. I say slow trickle. It's going to trickle in where there's less and less supply, that kind of stuff. It's more substantial. This is just more the stuff that, in the back of your head, you find Bitcoin and you think this solves so many of the issues that I see in the world, like this, right? There's also going to be more global turmoil. Like we saw Ukrainians that had to leave their homes and stuff. They could pretty much bring nothing, right? At the beginning of the Ukrainian war, when people were trying to get out before the war really started. And people talked about how really one of the only things they could bring was crypto, right? And we've seen other terrible things happen to people over time where they had to stash their wealth, like sometimes in their own body. And if you can do that with Bitcoin, if you can just remember your seed phrase or somehow write it down, carry it somehow, you can bring billions of dollars with you at any point without having anything physical on you. Then obviously there's just going to be more government printing and liquidity. We talked a little bit about that with Argentina, but take a look at the US dollar. We need about $26 to account for what $1 was worth for about 100 years ago. So obviously the value of our currency has gone down. Other countries are even worse. Like Argentina has 124% cost of living inflation, right? That means that their cost of living has more than doubled in a year. Imagine you spend, 80 grand a year this year, and then your cost of living goes to 160 grand the next year. I can't imagine that. And it's even more than that because it's 124%. So these types of things move people to Bitcoin. Let me know your thoughts underneath the video. I think this is probably one of the better videos to come back to over time and just say, how many of these things have actually happened? Check mark, check mark, check mark. How many more big things could push up the price of Bitcoin? And there are more things that come up all the time that I think of that could be great for cryptocurrencies. Let me know if there's something I missed. Let me know if there's some huge catalyst down below in the comments section. This is more Bitcoin specific, but you could do this with a lot of different crypto assets as well. I think Bitcoin just has more broad appeal and more properties that are beneficial than a lot of other cryptocurrencies, right? There are more, I think, niche use cases for certain cryptocurrencies, but Bitcoin can do a lot. Now, let me know your thoughts on all this underneath the video. Again, thank you so much for watching. Check out the links to Margex, to BitGet, all that stuff, treasure underneath the video, and I'll see you in the next one.